Kristoph, the director of tonight's show, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. I thought I would give you a brief history of this play. It premiered in London's West End on February 14th, 1895, exactly 128 years and 4 days ago. On that Valentine's Day evening, the weather couldn't have been worse because London was experiencing its worst and most severe snowstorm in years. But the fashionable first night audience was undeterred. The opening of Wilde's new play, his fourth in London in just 3 years, was a major social event. Although rumors had been circulating about his clandestine private life, a life that would soon bring his successful career to a screeching halt soon after Earnest opened, he had long been the main attraction at fashionable salons, artistic at-homes, and exclusive dinner parties. A ticket to the first night of a new play by Oscar Wilde suggested taste and social distinction. Undoubtedly, that's why you were all here tonight. Yeah, Earnest was an immediate hit. The audiences laughed uproariously at seeing themselves being reflected in the mirror that the play held up to that late Victorian elite. The importance of being earnest became to be seen as Wilde's greatest theatrical achievement. So, why does the play remain so popular for over 128 years? Well, it was clearly a new genre of commercial play that was difficult to imitate, since it combined farce, comedy of manners, social satire, and I would add gender parody. Wilde plays with the illusions created by appearances and mocks the notion of gender identity by raising the question about the difference between true masculinity and true femininity, a concept that you could say was years ahead of its time. For example, you will see the young ingenue, Cecily. Her outside appearance is quite feminine, but her attitude could be considered somewhat masculine, as she has a capital appetite and she goes for long walks. In Victorian times, you see, women were not supposed to have bodily functions, such as eating or partake in physical activity, such as walking. How scandalous of Cecily to do both. And on the other hand, you have Jack and Algernon. They are clearly men, but they act like a pair of dandies with certain traits that today we might call effeminate. Wilde's exploration of gender perhaps reaches its apex in the character of Lady Bracknell, one of the most treasured roles for actresses in the entire canon of English-speaking theater. However, the role has increasingly attracted male actors who are drawn by the androgynous and masculine qualities in Wilde's characterization of her. So, okay, that is enough on the history of late 19th century English theater. Now, a bit about the Middlebury Community Players. MCP is one of the resident companies here at Town Hall Theater, and we've been part of the Middlebury community since 1959, 64 years ago and still going strong. Tonight, you're going to see 9 actors perform for you on this stage. What you won't see is the incredible behind-the-scenes team, both backstage and in the community, that makes shows like this possible. It's a tremendous amount of work, but it's also a tremendous amount of fun. We urge you, if you'd like, to join us. If you've ever been interested in getting involved in the performing arts, or even if you've never even thought of it, we have the perfect place for you. On stage, backstage, audience member, supporting member, the list is endless. We need support of all kinds to make MCP work. You will see in tonight's program the names of the many local businesses that have made generous financial contributions to the players, and they're a huge part of what makes our community so strong and vibrant. Please, remember to thank them for supporting the arts, and we hope that you too will consider becoming a member if you aren't already. Details are on our website, which you'll find in your program. And now a quick bit of housekeeping. There will be one 15-minute intermission between Acts 1 and 2. Please note, there will not be an intermission between Acts 2 and 3. So, you may wish to think about that during the first intermission, the only intermission, when you walk by the restrooms on your way downstairs to buy refreshments that will be on sale, available in the gallery. All concession proceeds go to our scholarship fund. The Middlebury community players are very serious about that word, community. We couldn't survive without local talent. We try to give back to the community as much as we can. So each year, the players give 2 $1,000 scholarships to area high school seniors who have shown commitment to theater and who are continuing their education. We also help to subsidize costs for children and adults to pursue training in classes to develop their theater skills. So during the break, please head downstairs to enjoy some refreshments, and if you hear a bell ring at concessions, it means someone has said, keep the change. So don't be afraid to be as generous as possible to ensure that our bell ringers downstairs have to ring that bell so much that they can't wait for the intermission to be over and for Act 2 to begin. So I'd like to remind you now to please turn off all cell phones and any recording or electronic devices. Please, 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 no photography, no recording of any kind. And last but not least, a big thanks to the staff and technical team here at Town Hall Theater for all of their help in helping us get our show up and running in this beautiful space. And now, Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. Thanks.
Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that. For your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately. But I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
By the way, Lane, I see by your book that on Thursday evening, when Lord Shoreham and Mr. Worthing went to dinner with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Now, why is it at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the wine? I ask merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to the present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
You don't know that I care much for your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural. I am sure that will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
Oh, my dear, Ernest, how are you? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. Why don't you bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary for one to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
And what does one do in the country?
But when one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
Who are the people who amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
What nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Yeah? Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
Merely Aunt Augusta and Gwedolen.
Perfectly delightful.
Yes, it is all very well, but I'm afraid that Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwedolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwedolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwedolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you had come up for pleasure and call that business.
Utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. One may be accepted. Well, one usually is, I hear. But when you excite when it is all over. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algie. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
Speculating on the subject, divorces were made in it. Don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all this time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Then we may have the bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwedolen. Gwedolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
That is nonsense.
It isn't. It is a great truth. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors that one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwedolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you shall have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily? I don't know anyone by the name of Cecily.
Bring me the cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir. Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case this whole time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I was writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, now it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
It is absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one talks about in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone by the name of Cecily, and you say you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady, too, lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back, Algie.
Yes, but why does your aunt call herself Lady Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From little Cecily with the fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall. Some aunts are not tall. That seems to be a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, just give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? There is no objection, I admit, in an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt of any size should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I've ever seen in my life. It is perfectly absurd. Your name isn't an Ernest. It is on your cards. Here is one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, Albany. I shall keep this as proof. If you ever try to deny your being Ernest to myself, to Gwedolen, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. The cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her uncle. come on, boy, you'd much better have the thing out at once.
My dear fellow, you talk exactly as though you were a dentist. It's a very vulgar thing to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That is exactly what dentists always do. Now go on. I must say that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you reveal to me why you are Earnest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now produce your explanation, and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable at all about my explanation. In fact, I think it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Tomás Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as uncle through motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of the admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Oh, where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I may tell you quite candidly, it is not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburyed all round that place on 2 separate occasions. Now go on. Why are you Earnest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algie, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And, as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much with either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother by the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear young fellow, is the real truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if a writer, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That would be at all a bad thing.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. Don't try it. Leave that to people who haven't been to university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. Now, I must say that I have always suspected you of being a Bunburyist. In fact, you are one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you choose. I have invented a permanent invalid friend called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down to the country as often as I please. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I have been rather engaged to Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
You are so careless about sending out invitations. Nothing annoys one more as not receiving an invitation.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of the kind. To begin with, I dine with her on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, I'm always treated as a member of the family, and either sent down with no woman or 2. In the third place, I know exactly who she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who is always flirting with her own husband across the dinner table. That sort of thing is not decent, indeed, it is not even pleasant. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly disgraceful. It's simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bunburyist, I want to talk to you all about Bunbury. I want to tell you all the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwedolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in either case. Cecily has become a little too interested in him. It's rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of my brother, Earnest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which I seem to find extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury is a very tedious time.
That is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwedolen, and she's the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
And your wife, really, you don't seem to realize, my dear fellow, that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
That, my dear young fellow, is the theory that the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
and that the happy English home has proved in half the time. For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical. My dear fellow, it isn't easy to be anything nowadays. There's such a lot of beastly competition about. That must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives or creditors ever ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way, so that you may have the opportunity of proposing to Gwedolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It's so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling quite well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, you are smart.
Oh, I am always smart. Aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
Oh, you are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that, for that would leave me no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we're a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Harcourt. I haven't been there since the death of her poor husband. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I shall have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Gwedolen, you want to come and sit here?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens! Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers!
No, sir. Not even for ready money. That will do, lady.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly changed its colour. For what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Oh, thank you. Oh, I have quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. Such a nice woman. So devoted to her husband, it's delightful to watch.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, that I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
Well, I certainly hope not. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he's accustomed to that.
It is a great ball, and need I hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But I have just received word that my poor friend Bunbury has just fallen dreadfully ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It's very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say that I wish Mr. Bunbury would make up his mind, one way or the other, if he is going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of this modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling this to your poor uncle, but he never seems to pay much notice as far as any improvements in his ailments is concerned. But I would be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me if he would be so kind as to refrain from having a relapse on Saturday, because I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something which will encourage conversation, especially at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases wasn't very much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. But I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll let you run over the program I've drawn out, if you will accompany me into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. That's very kind of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. Everyone seems to think that they're improper. They either look shocked, which is vulgar, or they laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe it is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany us.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I feel quite certain they mean something else, and that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
Yes, I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since, well, since I met you.
Yes, I'm quite aware of the fact, and I've often wished that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon mentioned that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Oh, you really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. You don't mean to say that you couldn't love me then.
No, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. Like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Earnest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
Oh, it suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music all its own. It inspires vibrations.
Well, Gwendolen, I must say, I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibration. I've known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, have been more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who's married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. A really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely, you know that I love you. You led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent toward me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity, and to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I can tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolen!
Yes, Mr. Worthing. What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it? I'm afraid you don't have very much experience in how to propose.
My own one. I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. Girlfriend tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture.
I must beg
It
you
is
to
most...
retire. This is not the place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Not quite finished what, may I ask?
I'm engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, but you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, either I or your father, should his health permit, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant, as the case may be. It's hardly a matter that she could be expected to arrange for herself. And now I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I make these inquiries, you, Gwedolen, will wait for me in the carriage below.
Mamma!
The carriage, Gwedolen. The carriage! You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, though I have the same list the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am willing to enter your name should your answers be all that a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm pleased to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
Very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to be married should either know everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm glad to hear it. I do not approve of anything which tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it, and the bloom is gone. Modern theories of education are radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In investments or in land?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What between the duties expected of one during one's life and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I have a house in the country, with some land, of course, attached to it, about 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
The country house. How many bedrooms? That point could be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwedolen could hardly be expected to live in the country.
Well, I own a home in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham. I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays, that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What are your politics?
Well, I'm afraid I really have none. I'm a liberal unionist.
Oh, they count as Tories. We have them to dinner, or they come in the evening at any rate. Now, minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
Oh. To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who's your father? You tyrannical papers called the Purple of Commerce, or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
Well, I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found. The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
And where did this charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
Handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag. A somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it. A rather ordinary handbag, in fact.
What particular locality did this Mr. James and Mrs. Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the writing line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born or to be bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to display a contempt for the ordinary family decencies which remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which this handbag was found, the cloakroom of the railway station may serve to disguise a social indiscretion. Indeed, has probably been used for that purpose before now, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognized position in good society.
May I ask you then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolen's happiness.
Well, I strongly advise you to try and find some relatives as soon as possible. And to make a definite effort to produce one parent at any rate before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It's in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me? What has it to do with me, sir? You can hardly imagine that Lord Bracknell and I would dream of allowing our daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and to form an alliance with a parcel? Good day, Mr. Worthing.
Good day. Oh, for goodness sake, Algy, don't play that ghastly tune. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say that Gwedolen refused you? I know it is a way she has. She is always refusing people. I think it most ill-natured of her.
Gwendolen is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are already engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. I've never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I'm quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't the faintest idea about how to live, nor the remotest idea about when to die.
That is nonsense. It isn't. Well, I won't argue about it. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming exactly like her mother in about 150 years, do you?
All women become like their mothers, and that is their tragedy. No man does, and that is his.
Is that clever?
Perfectly phrased and quite as true as any observation in civilized life should be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without running into clever people. It's becoming an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
You can.
I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
Fools persuade clever people, of course.
Oh, what fools.
By the way, did you tell Gwedolen about your being Earnest and Howling Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl like that. My, what extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave to a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty, and to someone else if she's plain.
No, that is nonsense.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Earnest?
Oh. Before the end of the week, I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say a severe chill.
You are quite sure that a severe chill is not hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well. My poor brother Ernest is carried off in Paris suddenly by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But didn't you say that Miss Cardew was a little too much attached to your brother? Won't you feel he's lost a good deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has got a capital appetite, goes long walks, and pays no attention at all to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I shall take very good care that you never do. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
You told Gwedolen that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18.
One doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwedolen are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. Just you wait. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they've met, they'll be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they have called each other a good deal of other things first. Now, my dear fellow, if we want to get a good table at Lewis's, we must go up and dress. Did you know it is nearly 7?
Oh, it is always nearly 7.
I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What shall we do after dinner? Go to a theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
What about a club?
No, I hate talking.
We might trot round the Empire and act 10.
Oh, no, I can't bear looking at things. It's so silly.
Then what shall we do?
Nothing.
It's very hard work doing nothing. I mean, I don't mind hard work when there's no definite object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax.
Gwedolen, upon my word.
Algie, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwedolen, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algie, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude toward life. You are not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Whatever influence I ever had over Mamma, I lost at the age of 3. But, although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing that she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh, dear Gwedolen.
The story of your romantic origin is related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, has naturally stabbed the deeper fibers of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Woolton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned round already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to your carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
Bill. Bill. Bill, a glass of sherry, lady.
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going thundering.
Yes, sir.
I shall probably not be back till Monday. You may put up my smoking jacket, my Sunday best, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best
intellectual girl. The only girl I ever loved in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
I'm just so worried for my poor friend Bunbury, that is all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury is going to get you into a serious scrape someday.
I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never serious.
That is nonsense, Algy. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.